All right. So going back to our analogy of the pack of cigarette. So again, if you buy a pack of cigarette and you think of the pack as a muscle fiber, so the pack of cigarette is a muscle fiber, and inside you see these rod-like cigarettes, right? You can compare each cigarette to a myofibril. If you open the wrapper of the cigarette, inside you will see tobacco. You'll find tobacco inside. And that tobacco can be compared to the myofilaments, which are thick and thin filaments. Good. So in this picture, we see myofibrils made up of myofilaments. Hope that's clear. Now, I want you to notice one thing. Do you see the green Z lines? Do you see that? Those are called Z discs. We will talk about this a little later in the lecture, but I want you to understand this is a Z disc and this is another Z disc. And from one Z disc to the next Z disc, so let's say from one Z disc to the next Z disc, this unit is called a sarcomere. What is this called? Sarcomere. Some students call it sacromere, and that bothers me so much. It's not sacromere, it is sarcomere. Say it, sarcomere. Okay, now the idea is the myofilaments, or the thick and thin filaments, are organized within each sarcomere in a definite pattern. So if you look at a sarcomere, you see, you see the thin filaments and the thick filaments organized in a definite pattern, right? So this is how a sarcomere looks like. And remember, within a myofibril, which is this long rod-like protein that extends throughout the length of the muscle fiber, within this myofibril, thick and thin filaments are organized into sarcomeres. So if you think of a myofibril as a hallway, each sarcomere is a classroom, if that makes sense to you. So in this picture, we see 1, 2, 3 sarcomeres. Do you see? They are arranged side to side throughout the length of the myofibril. More on the sarcomere coming up later. All right, so looking at the diagram from the textbook, so we do see a bone and a muscle is attached to the bone. So this is the skeletal muscle, as you see, skeletal muscle. If you zoom into the skeletal muscle, you will see these bundles, right? And these bundles are called fascicle. And this is a fascicle. And if you zoom into a fascicle has these bundles, and these rod-like bundles or rod-like structures are called muscle fibers. So we talked about the skeletal muscle, fascicle, muscle fiber. If you pull out each muscle fiber and zoom in, you will see numerous rod-like proteins right here. And these rod-like proteins are called myofibrils. So these are the myofibrils. These rods, again, blowing it up. So these rods are called myofibrils. These are myofibrils. And remember, myofibrils in turn are made up of myofilaments. So we have muscle, fascicle, muscle fiber, myofibrils, and myofilaments. So muscle, fascicle, muscle fiber, Muscle fiber is made up of myofibrils. Myofibrils are made up of myofilaments, two types of myofilaments we talked about. Thick and thin filaments. Thick filaments made up of myosin protein, and thin filaments are made up of actin proteins. Okay, moving on. So, Rupa, what are these structures wrapped around with? Well, now each layer of these structures are wrapped by connective tissue covering, and there are four that we will address here. And these four are, actually, let me go back to my drawing. Okay. If we look into the muscle, or let's start with the muscle fiber. Individual muscle fiber remains surrounded by, this is a wrapping or the covering, connective tissue covering, and this is called endomysium. Say it, endomysium. If you look at each fascicle is wrapped with, each fascicle is wrapped with perimysium, and each muscle is wrapped with epimysium. So we have epimysium surrounding the muscle, we have perimysium surrounding each fascicle, and then we have endomysium surrounding each muscle fiber. Good. Now on top of the epimysium, there is another covering, and you can imagine this as a plastic wrap on top of the cigarette box. If you buy a cigarette box, there's a plastic cover, right? So the outermost layer, or the most superficial layer, can be compared to that plastic wrap, and that is called deep fascia. So there is this another covering, and this covering is called deep fascia. The deep fascia actually separates one muscle from other muscles. Okay, that's a function of deep fascia. It separates between muscles. So hopefully we understand the different connective tissue layers surrounding the different structures of the muscle. Okay, so we did talk about the four connective tissue layers. Endomysium is around each muscle fiber. So this layer is endomysium. Perimysium is around each fascicle. Oh, my bad. Sorry, just ignore. Let me erase this. Sorry. Erase. Okay. So this is a muscle fiber, right? Surrounding the muscle fiber, you have endomysium. Endo surrounding each muscle fiber. This is a fascicle. This is a fascicle. And surrounding the fascicle, you will have perimysium. So this would be peri. And then this is the entire muscle, and this would be the epimysium. Okay, so epi surrounding the muscle, peri surrounds the fascicle, and endo surrounds the muscle fiber. Okay, and then on top of this, on top of the epimysium, do you see the white layer here that extends to form the tendon? The white layer is the deep fascia. Okay. All right. Now, a muscle cell is a long cell, right? It's long. And therefore, we typically call a muscle cell a muscle fiber. Know that a muscle cell and muscle fiber, these two terms are interchangeable. Now, if you look at a typical eukaryotic cell, let me draw a typical eukaryotic cell. The membrane is called plasma membrane, right? However, if you look at a muscle fiber, the membrane is called sarcolemma. Inside a typical cell, the fluid or the soup is called cytoplasm. So this would be, this is cytoplasm. Inside a muscle fiber, the soup inside is called sarcoplasm. I want you to remember these terms because we will refer to these terms a lot. Okay, now inside an eukaryotic cell, we have smooth endoplasmic reticulum, right? So inside you have smooth endoplasmic reticulum. In case of a muscle fiber, these smooth endoplasmic reticulum runs like this. This is called sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay? Okay. So you must know the different structures associated with the muscle fiber or the muscle cell. Okay. Some other terminologies associated with muscle fiber. Now, the sarcolemma, which is a membrane of the muscle fiber, is tucked inside at places around the myofibril. And those form transverse tubules or known as T-tubules. So T-tubules are invaginations of the sarcolemma into the sarcoplasm. What is that? So right here in the picture, we do see a muscle fiber and the sarcolemma is open. Do you see that? The sarcolemma is cut and open. Now there are places where the sarcolemma invaginates, meaning it goes deep down and it gets wrapped around each myofibril, and those are these green tubes. Do you see the green tube-like structures? These ones. These are called T-tubules or transverse tubules, and they are formed by invagination of the sarcolemma. All right. Now look at each myofibril. Look at this myofibril. If you look at each myofibril, you do see that it remains surrounded by a blue meshwork-like structure. The blue meshwork is sarcoplasmic reticulum. That is the blue meshwork-like structure. And the blue meshwork runs pretty much parallel to the myofibril as we see. However, on either side of the transverse tubule, it forms blind sac-like structures. Do you see that? So I'm talking about this part and this part. So on either side of the T-tubule, the green structure is T-tubule, and on either side, the sarcoplasmic reticulum forms sac-like structures, and those sac-like structures are called terminal cisternae. So terminal cisternae. Okay. Now remember, the terminal cisternae stores calcium. It stores calcium. Okay, I'll stop here and then continue with another video.